Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We fished all day yesterday. We caught 0 fish. We went to 3 different lakes and tried a whole bunch of different techniques. Literally could not get anything to work. Today we're out here fishing again, trying to make some videos, and you guessed it, we've caught 0 so far. So what happens when you're out on the water, you get your day of fishing, and you can't catch anything? What are you supposed to do? Today we're gonna break that down for you, and I'm gonna show you one of my favorite techniques to catch fish no matter how tough the fishing is. This will just always get bites and put fish in the boat, on the bank, wherever you may fish. So we're gonna break all that down for you in today's video. And that technique for me is gonna be the wacky rig. So we'll talk all about the setup and everything like that later. I've done a few videos on this already. So I'll link one at the end of today's video talking all about everything you need to know about the wacky rig. What we're gonna focus on mostly today is how and where you wanna fish this thing to get the most amount of bites. And to be honest, the wacky rig, it's gonna get bites no matter what. So my starting point is literally to fish the most obvious pieces of cover that I know there should be a fish on that 100%. So that's what we're gonna start by doing today. We're gonna fish around looking at very obvious places. Right now, I'm fishing pieces of wood that are in the water, under overhanging trees. We'll show you actually how I wanna fish this thing. I really soak this bait in certain areas. And like I said, I'm using this technique when fishing is so tough, you can't get anything else to bite, you just wanna catch some fish. This is how I'm gonna set it up, and we're gonna go through all that today. 2 days without fish. Today we'll catch some fish. So let's see what happens. There we go. I've gone 2 days without catching a fish, and we finally caught one. Now, the thing with the wacky rig is you might not catch the biggest bass in your lake, but when you're out here in the middle of August and it's 90 degrees and all you want to do is set the hook on some fish, not a bad way to catch them. So we're gonna throw him back. Hopefully we'll catch some bigger ones than that. But basically, prime target right there. There's nothing on this bank, and there's one bush sitting right there with a shaded spot. I threw that bait in there, didn't even make it to the bottom. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for those prime targets. You know there's a fish gonna be there, and you just really soak that bait in place and make sure you get as many bites as possible. And like I said, you may not catch the biggest fish, you may catch the biggest fish. A lot of times in late August, like we're at right now, late August to early September, some of these fish will actually start to push back shallow again because they feel that fall transition taking place. It was like 50 degrees this morning. I could have been out here in a hoodie and sweatpants and been comfortable. So those fish feel that colder temperature starting to happen. There's leaves falling already. They know what's going on. So there'll be some big ones that start to move back shallow here, and you'll actually be able to catch some bigger fish doing this, some big shallow resident fish that'll move up early fall. Just by throwing a wacky rig around and just trying to get bites. So we'll keep throwing this thing around and see if we can catch us some more. I'm sure we're gonna catch us a couple more here, and hopefully one bigger than that. And we got us another one. They're tiny, but we're catching fish. That one, again, there's like a clump of grass all by itself up there, just one little clump, and there's a nice shaded spot over it. So while I've been fishing down this bank and kind of soaking my bait as I go along, I've been casting it at everything. If there's a stick in the water, I'm throwing my bait at it, because you never know what could be under the water right there. There could be a whole tree branch underneath the water there, and that's where that fish is gonna sit. But if it has shade, I know there's bait in the area. I've been seeing bluegills and stuff suspended up in the water column. So you have bait, you have shade for them to live in, which gives them a little bit cooler, more oxygenated water. You just need a piece of cover for those fish to live on throughout the summer. And then they'll just set up there and sit there. So that's where I really soak my bait. Like this log coming up right here looks like a perfect place to soak a bait. So I'll skip it up underneath that tree in the shade. I'll pull it exactly where I want that bait, and then I just let my line lay on the water, and I'll watch what it does. A lot of times you'll actually see the fish bite it on a very calm, sunny day like this. You'll see your line dart or take off, but sometimes you won't. So a lot of times I'll just let it sit there for 5 seconds or so. I'll pick up my slack. I'll kind of shake it a little bit, see if there's a fish on it. Nothing. I'll let it sink just a little bit longer. And then no bites there. So I hit a stick there. So a lot of times if you feel your bait is in a piece of cover, when I break it free from that cover, I'll let it sink one more time just in case a fish is looking at it. No bites that time, so I'll go ahead and reel that back in, and we'll make another cast at this bigger tree branch up here. So like That's just a tiny little stick that's in the water right there. So there could be a fish there, there might not be. Most likely the biggest fish in the lake or that's on this bank is gonna set up on a giant tree like this where it can have its own home and area to cover. So we'll get back to fishing, see if we can catch us some more, maybe a bigger one. There's another one. I don't care how small they are, this is so much fun. I've been dying to catch fish. Oh. We're gonna go ahead and get him off here. Getting them all hooked up nice, which is nice. So we'll throw him back. We're gonna rig up another Senko and we'll talk about that one. So you can see right here, I drifted up on the spot. This is literally where I just caught that fish. There's just a couple blades of grass, but that's enough for him to sit in and claim his home, knowing that there's probably bluegills under that tree there. There's some bluegills over here, and there's a lot of bait around for them to eat. Especially like this smaller grass up here. That fish is very small, so he might not even be able to eat full-size bluegills yet. But there's like a lot of baby bluegill fry and stuff that will hang up in the shade and tiny grass up here. So that gives him a perfect place to sit, have a home, and then whenever he wants a meal, he can just go up on the bank and get something to eat. And that wacky rig falls right in their face, and they can't resist it. They'll bite it every single time. So that's third one of the day in literally 20 minutes. So we're on a roll. No big ones yet, but that doesn't mean we won't catch one. The one thing with the wacky rig is sometimes you got to weed through a lot of numbers. In the summertime, those smaller fish that are very young, don't know any better, they'll actually live up on the bank. They'll live shallow, and they'll eat anything. So like you just have to weed through a lot of fish and eventually you'll catch a bigger one. So we'll keep working our way through, see if we can catch us some bigger ones here. But like I said, 2 days without fish and I just caught 3 in 20 minutes just by picking up the wacky rig. So anytime the fishing's tough, give it a shot, and you'll be catching some fish. So let's get back to it, see if we can catch us a few more. There we go, got one that time. Got him. Little. Oh, we are tearing them up though. Went from nothing to 4. We're on them. Not a big one whatsoever. We'll throw him back. We're gonna find us a big one, don't you worry. I say that and then I probably will end up not catching a big one, but we're gonna try our best. All right, so we got to rig up a new Senko here. So let's talk quickly about gear, what I'm using here, and then we'll get back to fishing. We'll show you how it all lines up again. So hopefully catch a couple more after we talk about gear. All right, so let's talk about gear for this wacky rig setup right here. I keep it very simple with my wacky rig, and honestly, you don't even need a specialized setup. I'm gonna talk about this rod a little bit just because I've absolutely loved fishing a wacky rig on this thing. But seriously, if you have a 7-foot medium spinning rod with some braided line on it, or even fluorocarbon if that's what you like, or even mono, it doesn't really matter. If you have a spinning rod that's a 7-foot, 6'6", somewhere in that range, and it's a medium-ish action, you already have a wacky rig set up. It works just fine. I've used this one lately, one, to get fish out of heavier cover. So I fish a lot of docks up here in the Northeast. This is a mean dock skipping rod. Like I can get fish out of the heaviest of cover. I can change my leader test on here to get them out and still fish those finesse techniques. It also works around like the grass and stuff we've been fishing up here, the wood, any of that stuff. So my setup that I have here, this is the Cashin Icon spinning rod. This is in the 7.2 medium heavy. This is actually a shaky head rod, and that's what it's listed as on their website. I will link everything down below, either the exact product or something comparable, depending on if they make it or not anymore. I'll link something down below for everything we're going to talk about right here. If you want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it besides your views and subscription. I very much appreciate it. But if you can purchase anything down in the links below when you're looking for tackle, it helps me out a ton. So that's the Cashin Icon spinning rod. It's just a 7'2" fast, medium heavy. Like I said, shaky head rod, but it works just fine for a wacky rig. It just allows me to put more heat on them. It still has a soft tip to be able to feel if there's a fish on the end. Usually I'm using my line anyway, and then it has enough backbone to get a good hook set and get them out of cover. I have a Shimano Sedona 2500 on here, spooled up with 15-pound test lime green braid. We'll talk about why that's important out here on the water while we're fishing it, but it basically allows you to see what your worm is doing, and make sure you're putting it in the right areas where the fish live, and making sure it's acting properly, and it'll help you catch more fish as well. So that's what I have set up here, and then that braid allows me to run whatever pound test leader I want on here. So typically, I use an 8-pound test fluorocarbon leader for my wacky rig fishing. That's usually my go-to. When I'm fishing around heavier cover, that's when I'm gonna start switching it up. I'll go to 10-pound, and I even carry 12-pound sometimes if I really have to go that heavy. But for the most part, you still want a light leader to make your bait act properly. So the lighter you can go to still land those fish, the better off you're gonna be, the more fish you're gonna catch. So that's the way I like to rig mine up. 10-pound test is like the highest I usually go. If I really am breaking fish off or fishing around some bigger ones, 12 is like my max. That's about as high as I'll ever go. On the hook end here, this is just a size 1 VMC Finesse Nico hook. Nothing special about that hook at all except for the weed guards and that longer shanked hook. I feel it helps me keep more fish hooked up, and it works really well around cover. Let's jump in the center box here. We're gonna grab a worm and my ring, and I'm gonna show you how I like to set this up to catch more fish. All right, so for starters, the worm, today we've been using the Gary Yamamoto Senko. This is just in a baby bass color. The water's really clear. Wanted something that would work in clear water. It's like a watermelon-y color. Nothing really special there. I could probably throw any color worm and it would work just fine. These are very old. You can see I still got the OG packaging there. And then this right here is the ring that I've been using, and this is very important. I've fallen in love with these rings lately. This is the VMC crossover ring, and I have it in a clear. It really doesn't matter what color you use. Most of the time your O-rings are black anyway, and you're putting it on a different colored bait. So if it doesn't match, it's no big deal. But what you do with this O-ring here, it has 2 ways you can rig it up. So I can either Nico rig this bait, or I can wacky rig it, and it will keep your hook in the correct alignment when you're fishing that. And it also has a thick enough band on there that these Senkos hold up much longer. You're not gonna get a ton of fish out of them, but better than an O-ring. So all I'm gonna do, I have these pliers right here. They're just some like Nico rig pliers, so I can spread that opening up. So I'm gonna open that up, and then I'm gonna take my worm and slide it up through there to wherever I want that O-ring to sit. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and pop that off like that. And then I have my O-ring right in the middle. That clear actually works really good on that watermelon. So it doesn't have to be that way if you don't have a matching color to your worm. But now you have an opening that goes this way and an opening that goes this way. So I'm gonna take my hook, and since I'm gonna wacky rig today, I'm gonna use the opening that goes perpendicular to the bait. So I'm gonna take my hook, it goes right through there, and it literally sits right on the hook shank like that, or on the hook bend right there, and it will keep your hook perfectly aligned just like that. So I've really liked these rings recently. I've caught a lot of fish using them. I've experimented with them all spring. I have them in every size. This is a 6mm if you're curious, but every size I use it on all different types of worms. Anytime I'm Nico rigging or wacky rigging, that's my setup. So let's get back out on the water and see if we can catch a couple more fish. So we got our fresh Senko rigged up. We're ready to do some more fishing, and we're gonna try and catch us a couple more. But you'll notice for the most part, when I'm setting the hook on these fish, I almost know they're on there immediately before I ever even set the hook. I just got bit right there. Ready? Got that one. Little one again, but like I was saying, I literally know that those fish are on there before I ever set the hook, all because of this lime green braid and this rod. This rod's pretty sensitive too, and braid helps that sensitivity. But most of the times I'm not feeling these fish bite it as much as I'm watching them bite it. So what I'm doing is when I throw my bait up there, like I'll cast up to a clump of grass over here, I will cast my bait where I want it to sit. So I put my bait in the area right in that clump of grass, and I'm just gonna lay my line on the water. A whole bunch of slack is fine. You can reel up the slack and set the hook. They're not gonna drop this Senko. So I'm watching my line, and it's just slowly pulling out, which is that Senko slowly sinking down to the bottom. And a lot of times, like when I did that one there, I hopped it a couple times, and when I let it lay back down on the bottom, I watched my line jump forward. It's because that fish had picked it up and ran with it. You'll see your line move left or right or do different movements. All you have to do is pay attention to that lime green braid, and it's going to tell you everything. So you can see what your bait's doing down there. Sometimes you'll lift up and that fish will have it because it's swimming towards you, and you'll never know because the braid isn't going to transmit if a fish is swimming towards you, unless the other reason that I use the lime green braid a lot of times is you'll cast it out there and I'm in 12 foot of water. I'm casting up into about 5 or 6. If I throw it out there and that bait sinks for 1 second and then stops, I know that a fish has already picked that up. Like, my bait is still sinking, so I know that that thing's just working as it should. But a lot of times, if you cast it out there and that bait sinks for 1 second and stops, a Senko does not sink that fast. So a fish has already picked that up, and you can go ahead and reel up tight and set the hook with it instead of thinking your bait's on the bottom. When you reel up and you start shaking it like that, sometimes you'll get the fish to spit it out or start to spit it out and you'll get a bad hook set. But if that bait only sinks for 1 second, you know it didn't make it all the way to the bottom, you can reel up tight and just get a good hook set on them. And that fish never knows it's coming. So the lime green braid is super important. It's been something I've been using on my spinning rods for years, and it works in all finesse technique scenarios, but I really like it when you're fishing a weightless wacky rig like this. It helps a ton. There we go. He's little too, but we got us another one. We're gonna try and get us one more. Hopefully it's a big one. If not, we got to move on and try and catch some other fish for some other videos, but we're gonna let him go and try and get us one more. See you, dude. That one was literally just sitting on the edge of these weeds right here. Mostly probably just roaming up and down this weed edge looking for food. He wasn't on anything special. I would have actually imagined him to be up on this stick right here that's mixed in with the weeds. That gives it something different than just a straight weed edge, but he was not. He was just kind of cruising around. So we'll keep fishing here and see if we can get us one more. There we go. Oh, he's little. Thought he was much bigger than he was. But like I said, we're gonna have to get on with some other videos here. But if you're ever having a tough day out there and you just need to catch some fish like I've been having today, go ahead and put on this wacky rig and you'll be catching fish in no time. We've caught like 7 or 8 in no time at all out here. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you want to see that rigging video on how to set everything up, go ahead and check this one out right here. We're gonna let him go and get back to fishing. But thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any more of my fishing videos coming up. Thanks for watching.